Hey, everybody, I don't know about you, but as you've watched out over the world, the war in Russia and Ukraine is not just isolated to Eastern Europe. It's spread all over the world, and you can see it in market instabilities. You can see it here. People who do not think that that war is affecting you, all you got to do is look at gas prices. You look at your food prices. You see the global change that has happened. But you know something that's also affected investments as well. And I've said all along, legacy precious metals is your navigator. They're the ones that see you through to get to the next level. The good news about this is even with market volatility, market instability, you've got options. And gold prices are rising as investors turn to gold. And gold presents a hedge against this inflation and that protects you against the weakening dollar, which we are seeing. Legacy Precious Metals is the only company I trust to deal with gold and silver and the other precious metals. You need this investment. You need this as part of your portfolio to keep you buffered from what we're seeing in the world, war and volatility in the market. This is where you need to be. Call Legacy Precious Metals today. Be proactive about this. Get on board with it. Call them at 866-528-1903, 866-528-1903, or you can download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. legacypminvestments.com, your navigator in a volatile world of investments.
Do you want to listen to a podcast?
By who?
Georgia GOP Congressman Doug Collins.
How is it?
The greatest thing I have ever heard in my whole life.
I could not believe my ears.
In this house, wherever the rules are disregarded, chaos and mob rule. It has been said today, where is bravery? I'll tell you where bravery is found and courage is found. It's found in this minority who has lived through the last year of nothing but rules being broken, people being put down, questions not being answered, and this majority say, be damned with anything else. We're going to impeach and do whatever we want to do. Why? Because we won an election. I guarantee you, one day you'll be back in the minority and it ain't gonna be that fun.
So what are college coaches doing right now?
Right now, they are organizing for their off-season program, spring practice. They are evaluating last year's film, that what they did good, what they did bad. And this is going to be good for pros and college in many respects. But they're evaluating what they did good, what they did bad, what they need to improve upon. The difference, and I might even talk about the differences between college and pros while I'm, sitting here, because pros have got a decent idea who's going to be back next year.
Right.
Some of the colleges they're still recruiting their kids. They don't know who's going to be back next year. That's the challenge that they have.
Has NIL and transfer portal made that even worse, Coach?
Oh, it's 10 times worse. I mean, at least, 5 years ago, you knew who you had going into spring practice to practice. Right. You knew who you had. Because a guy, if to be eligible, he would have to have already transferred and gone somewhere else. And it just wasn't an open door policy at any point in time. And so it's much more difficult on the college guy right now, as far as evaluating what they did last year is about the same.
Right. Okay.
How good were we in red zone? How good were we in 2-minute offense? How good were we on kickoff return? All that. And but the her personnel, who you have, the pro guy has a great idea about what he has, and the college guy doesn't. Now, the other thing, recruiting never quits for college.
Right.
They're recruiting the guys for 25 and 26 right now. Okay. They're getting lists together and getting ready to go watch, some spring practice or go to 7-on-7s or whatever it is. And then the pro guy is sitting there doing evaluation of college guys for the draft. He's out on the road going to college pro days. He's at his desk watching film. So what we did in the pros was we split it. In the mornings was the pro football game, our team, what we did, evaluation. What the afternoon was spent, you did draft stuff. Right. So we split it morning, afternoon.
Okay. Well, now probably the bigger difference is this a fair assessment?
in the college ranks, the coach is the GM, the owner, the president. I mean, he's making the scholarship decisions, those kind of things. Whereas in the pros, depending on the team, the coach may be at the more of the mercy of the GM owner in player personnel decisions than say a college coach at this point.
Oh yeah, a lot more. You have a lot more autonomy as a college head coach than you do as a pro head football coach. Only those Belichick's and some of those that have reached that point of autonomy that they can make, most every decision that's out there. And that has changed over the years. For what reason, I don't know. But that has changed because back when I first started, Dan Reeves was the head coach. He had autonomy. He had everything. And there were a bunch of them that did. Bill Parcells, all of them had that. Now, it's not the case anymore. They divided it out for some reason, and don't know why they've done that, but they have.
Well, one of the questions is, does it make a coach? And I'm curious here. Does that make a coach more interchangeable or more dispensable? Maybe a better word for it for an owner and a GM.
Oh gosh, yes. And that's GMs sit with the owner in the game. If you notice,
right?
When they paying the owner in the box, the GM's sitting there. So he's not sitting there bad mouthing his decision about who he chose.
Exactly.
Guess what? If they're losing, guess who's getting shot at?
Hey, owner, I gave him the proper wrench. He don't know how to turn it.
That's exactly right.
There you go.
I mean, that's the way it works.
Well, and that's the way. Well, back to the colleges for a second. We'll hit this a little bit. Something's came up here in Georgia, and I don't know if you followed it a little bit. I just caught wind of it here recently. There's a kid over in it's basically the same place that high school that Trevor Lawrence came from over in Cedartown, that area. Juju Lewis. He's a 15-year-old quarterback. That's already won a state title. Everybody in the world's talking to him, this kind of thing. And the issue has come up of NIL in high school.
Yeah.
And the fact that he may move from possibility of moving from Georgia to, say, a California or a Florida where he could actually make money on name, image, and likeness while he's still in high school. Have we really – I mean, and again, I get it. You're a 15-year-old. You're going to do it, your parents. But have we really lost that much control over this?
Well –
Or is it just where it's going?
Or defined, have we lost this much control over this? Yeah. This being – the football and the NIL, or this being control of our society and control of morality and loyalty and teamwork as opposed to individualism? That's the question to me. Sports is it follows where society is going.
Right.
And that's the problem. When you make your society not have loyalty, not have morals, not have those types of things, then don't be shocked when athletics goes that same direction.
When it becomes a sum in game. Well, it's interesting enough to hear this kid. I mean, what was really interesting, and there was an ESPN article about this, that talked about it. I mean, from everything I can tell, I mean, the kid seems to be a good kid. I'm taking anything away from the kid. He seems to be a good athlete. He's actually, the way to look at it. The question comes though, is in the ESPN article, what I found was really interesting is that they mentioned his stats and then they mentioned his Instagram followers. He had 100,000 Instagram followers. It's like, well, how? Okay, you're now you're Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama. Everybody's offered this kid a scholarship. Okay, everybody has.
Right.
I mean, look, those are the big schools, Kirby and Day and the rest of them. I mean, they've got it. But does that give you pause if you're that coach, or do you have to go after these kind of kids? And I'm not saying the kid's bad, but when that becomes part of the package.
Well, I think if you don't, you're sticking your head in the sand and saying, we're just not going to be a part of that. I think first of all, you evaluate the young man and his family. And I say and his family because they're going to have a big say-so in this. So you evaluate them. If you decide you don't want to get into it, well, what you can't do, Doug, is sit there and say, we're done, we're out. You go up to the end, and then you make sure you don't win.
Right.
You stay in it just enough to where your name's still out there, you're still in the conversation, and then you decide to lose at the end.
Yeah. And I'm not saying this is true or not. Is Dabo been in that position the last couple of years?
What position are you talking about?
Just in that position with some of these players, because he has such. I mean, look, and I respect the hound out of it, but he has such a high standard. Not accepting transfers. We've talked about this before on the podcast. But is that a little? I mean, you just brought up an interesting topic. I mean, with coaches all over, you go in because you want to stay relative, but at the end of the end, it's like if I'm not winning, I got other things to do, but I need to stay here for the name ID. So it'll be our program is here. But if we lose, we don't. We're not losing stuff.
Right.
And I'm saying Dabo seems to have set that standard on some of these kids in a way.
He does. I think he has an idea of the young men that fit in his program. Yeah. I think he has an idea. And if they don't, he conveniently doesn't win. And that's okay. You gotta give him that,
Oh yeah.
You gotta, because he stayed relevant for a long, long time. No, that's not right. That is not even fair. He stayed near the top or at the top for a long, long time. Right. Not just relevant.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting this year. Ungalua has went out west. I mean, he's having to start over again. I mean, really, DJ was one of the first ones to actually do the NIL stuff. If you remember, Dr. Pepper gave him $1 million like before 2 years ago started, before the Georgia game 2 years ago, and the kid was never the same. I mean, and I'm not blaming NIL money, but it's like saying, now look, I hope this 15-year-old comes out to be the next Patrick Mahomes. I really do. I hope it for himself. I hope he's got a good head on his shoulders. And for all these 15, 16-year-olds out there, that's what I want to be. But, I mean, remember, this is a kid who ain't driving yet. We're predicting him to be multi-millionaire status on a stage in which you got millions of people looking at you and analyzing everything you do.
I know. I'm not for it. You're not for it. We grew up different.
Yeah.
But if there's people out there that think that's the way it's going to go and it goes, and we're sticking our head in the sand until the rules change, you have to play by the rules.
Exactly. So, well, I've been talking a lot about that on the political side, that there's some parties out there that, look, the rules are this. Either play by the rules or quit complaining when the other side does something better.
Right. That's exactly right.
Well, one of the things also in the offseason, we're going to get to the last year recap, but also look ahead too. There's rule changes coming out, and I saw last night that there's some proposed rule changes. I'd like to get your take on a couple of these. Prohibiting consecutive timeouts. So I guess what do you think about that?
I think that's a good idea. I'm sure there'll be some kind of caveat in there about if one of them's an injury timeout, if you had to take one for an injury and then you needed to take another one. But trying to ice kickers and trying to do all those kind of things, and if you're to be honest with you, if you're not sharp enough to get it done in the first timeout, you don't deserve a second timeout.
Exactly. Well, a question come up, and you just hit it there. Are we seeing the golden era of the player flop? The I'm injured flop. I mean, what are they going to do at some point? I mean, it's become so obvious in some of these, and I'm surprised I don't see a new rule change for that. But I mean, really, you think that'll be something addressed in the future?
I don't know. I don't know how you completely officiate intent. They have a rule in football called intentional grounding.
Yeah,
by the quarterback. We all know what the guy's doing, but there was a receiver over there within 17 yards, so it's okay. No, it's intentional grounding. So we've got a rule in there about intent, but it's very vague. And right now, I think they've got a very vague situation, and they don't want to make a rule till they can get more specific.
Yeah, here's a couple. There's one about time after the first, third quarter. Really didn't make a lot. But this clock running is an interesting perspective. This is in college. There's two rules. I'd like to hear your thoughts on these. Clock will continue to run after the offense gains a first down, except inside of 2 minutes and a half. And then the second one, clock will continue to run after an incomplete pass once the ball is spotted for the play.
Yeah, that's the pro rule.
It's the pro. So go to the pro. You think
that's the pro rule? It's all for TV.
Yeah.
The games are too long in college, so they're trying to shorten the game. And if they can speed the clock up inside of, I did it say first half out. The pro rule is inside of 2 minutes of the first half and inside of 5 minutes and 5 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, it's two. I think it's just two in a half. So both halves, two halves.
Okay, so they didn't do 5 minutes of the second half. So
okay.
It's 2 and 2. It's just to speed the game up.
Okay, and I know you played baseball growing up too. Especially in our generation, we play ball. Have you seen some of the new speed up rules for baseball?
Yeah, no chance. No chance. There's so much gray area. When does he get the ball? After a batted ball? What if they throw the ball out? Does that count as? Do you start the clock over? I can't wait to see this. I think it's going to be a boondoggle.
Oh, it was about what was it, 2 years ago when they started making the umpires check the pitchers coming off? The pitchers taking their clothes off.
Yeah.
What got me was the part that got me was the 15 and 30 second rule. But what got me was the only two two non-pitches to this. So in other words, you could only step off the mound once, or you could only throw two pitches over to first base for pickoffs. I'm like you. I said this is going to be interesting.
Oh gosh. What will that lead be after he's thrown it over there twice? What will the lead be on the next pitch for that guy on first base?
He'll be halfway in a second,
That's right.
It'll be pretty wild. Now one rule though I do think is good. Okay, and I'm just sort of old school a little bit more about this. Two players on the dirt on both sides of it. I'm for that. This 5 players on one side.
Yeah, I don't like the shifting either. I agree with that 100%. You got to have 2 infielders on either side of the second base. I'm all for that 100%. Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting to see, and it helps out some of those pure pull hitters. But it'll be interesting. Look, they'll adapt. They always do. We played it for years, and it gets there. Well, that brings us back. Well, after rule changes, one of the things getting into, and this is a sort of an interesting question. And you may say never, but when is a coach in college, is there a time of the year that a coach in college, especially a head coach, can say, hey, I'm going to take a month or 2 weeks or whatever and just try and play golf, relax, or whatever? Is there a time in the year when that is?
There used to be. This now recruiting is really all year long. They can take a week, and if they want to go somewhere, go, but they got to be back the next week. And then they take off, for a weekend deal. They got to be back for a weekend camp. They got to be back for a weekend visitation, something like that. But I would say 10 days would be the max a college coach could take off and go be completely gone, completely. And that's max. I'm not sure it can be 10 days anymore.
Oh, wow. And all right, speaking of coaching, because one of the things in the offseason, and we're going to talk about this because we can look at backwards here in a minute, but we'll look going ahead. Coaching changes and player changes. One of the big things, we've already talked about, transfer portals and stuff like that, but the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the others, they're sort of a reload mode in many of those cases. What does change at some of these schools is coaches, and especially offensive coordinators and others. Todd Monken leaving Georgia to go back and coach up in the pros. How big of a hit? Well, and I'm trying to keep my bias out of this, but Mike Bobo now coming back in. How big of a hit is that to Kirby to lose somebody like a Monken who's been doing his offense?
Yeah, change is never easy unless it was totally unsuccessful.
Right.
Which anytime you're changing from something that's been really successful, now that becomes very difficult. So, how much of a hit? How do we know? How do we know how the next quarterback's going to play? I don't know.
And who it's going to be.
If he plays great, then everybody says, no big deal. If he doesn't play great, then Bobo will get all the blame. That's part of it, That's part of coaching. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Exactly. Well, it's amazing. I mean, for many, and I'll share this with a lot of Georgia, diehard Georgia fans. The thought, and look, he's a good guy, he's a good family man. Anyway, but the thought of Mike Bobo being back as offensive coordinator at the University of Georgia was, I had texts all morning. Are you kidding me? Really? No. 3rd and 25 up the middle is not the play. I think Bobo's got a high bar at Georgia. I just think the leash is going to be pretty short.
Well, you keep up with it a lot more than I do, and I didn't get one text the day that happened.
I got fans who did. It's like, are you kidding me? We do that.
And to be honest with you, every coach out there is on a short leash now. That's just the way it is, And as I said, if you can't stand it, they accept resignations every day.
Yeah, take them right in. Well, flip it to the pro side. Now you've got – all right, and this will be a question. Is losing OCs and offensive coordinators, defense coordinators more, or is it the same, more changing on a college level or a pro level? Because now you're looking at Philadelphia. Philadelphia came very close in the Super Bowl, looked good. Mahomes is just Mahomes. But he now loses his offense coordinator and his defensive coordinator going into a new year with, again, as much pros do move. Which is the bigger impact, an offensive coordinator, defense coordinator loss on a college level or a pro level?
I think it's more in a college level, because in pro level, you've got enough money, you've got enough wherewithal to make sure you have got somebody in the wings, or you've done enough research that you've got a general idea of what you're going to do. I mean, it can't be a shock to everybody that Philadelphia was going to lose a coordinator. Nick Sirianni wasn't taking, oh my gosh, he's leaving. He had been thinking about this. He and the GM and the owner have been talking about this for a month and a half now. So it isn't like it's a shock to him. Whereas in college, you don't have the wherewithal to maybe, the one that's done it the best to me is Nick. Nick's always had one of those guys that they call, whatever they call them, an analyst.
Yeah.
They call an analyst. He had an analyst sitting there that he was developing to be the next coordinator. So, that's the situation that I think some of the colleges have, but most of the colleges don't have that wherewithal to do that.
One last look ahead, and then we're going to go backwards for a minute or two. Eric Bieniemy coming out of Kansas City, out of under Eric Reed, going to Washington, which is, we've talked about before, it's probably not the best owner environment in the world up there. What do you think of that move for him to head coach? Great as an OC.
Yeah.
But he also had Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Great players make great coaches.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you find some great players, you try not to mess them up. You know, when I had Aikman and I had Elway, I just tried to make sure I put them in a position to be successful. I didn't try to go, change a lot of stuff. And so I think it's going to be tough for him because he's not with a good organization and a good team. Right. Whereas the Hunts in Kansas City, they're a good organization and a good team. So it's going to be tough. But, I've done some things that people thought were stupid before too. But the good Lord takes care of idiots and children, and I'm no child.
We got that. All right, looking back, let's take college first. Georgia running the table again, second national title. Kirby probably at his best, looking at this, taking and did something that most didn't think he would do. He took and he made this comment many times during the season. I don't think the press really took him at his word on it. and this was not the same team that won the first national title. They lost a ton. These are really two different teams.
Yes.
How good does that make? And again, it's all relative in terms. I mean, he could go bad this year and everybody thinks he's terrible. But how good does that make a coach, really, for other coaches to look at that and say, wow, that's a good job?
Oh, everybody looks at that and says that's a great job, because he did lose a lot of good people. And what that tells me is they have a great idea about not their system, but how they put their players in a position to be successful. They don't try to fit players in the system. They adjust the system to fit the players they have to let them be successful. And they're doing an amazing job with that right now. And they're getting good players and putting them in position to be successful. And wait a minute, getting it out of them every week.
Yeah.
Now, Ohio State's got just as good of players, but they don't get it out of them every week.
Right.
You know? And it's not as consistent. And so what Kirby has done and his staff have done on a consistent basis is what's impressive to old coaches.
Well, and I think that's why Saban is so revered. I mean, he's
Yes.
just the process, and it's not just at Alabama. You got to go back. He won a national title at LSU. I mean, he's done it
Right.
before. And looking at it, and you think about that time. I mean, the divisions, the now the talk of one more year of this, and it's a 12-man playoff. I think after that, do you see it changing, Coach? I mean, Georgia, we had a tough game against Ohio State. I was there for the game. It was a weird game. You never felt Georgia was going to lose, but you never felt they were going to win either. It was just one of those. But they pulled it out in the end. Is the 12-team playoff really going to make that big of a difference right now?
I don't believe so. All it does is put more money in the NCAA. That's all it does.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, totally scary. But I mean, the same thing happens in high school. They say, "Oh, we want to give all the high school players a chance to be in the playoffs." Well, every playoff, the Georgia High School Association gets all the money from ticket sales. So they're happy to make as many playoff games as you want to have.
Yeah,
in every sport. So it makes I understand why they're doing it. It's TV, it's money. That's what drives it, unfortunately, not for the good of the game.
Well, it brings me to a story I watched the other day, and I've been on planes a lot lately. And on plane, there was one of the ESPN's 30 for 30s was about the old Big East, the basketball conference, when it was Georgetown. Yeah. And they talked about how quickly in the 80s, I mean, the money just started pouring in, ESPN. And how that when that went away, it was that breaking up of that. And I'm wondering if now, the Big Ten contract, the SEC contract, the ACC contract, it is such a money-driven aspect to this that it is interesting to see, that at the end of the day, though, for every Appalachian State winning against a D1 big-time, you have at the end of the day, frankly, the same 2 to 10 people in these playoffs or in these conversations, and it ain't changing because the fundamentals are still there. You still got to have the players. You still got to have the program. And
you still got to have the money to run the program and get the players. I mean, that's the bottom line. So there's going to be about, 20 at the most schools that are going to be able to get into those 12 probably. Yep. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think you're right. And looking at that from a perspective, looking from the past year, how hard is it? Because you've coached at different levels. How hard is it, do you believe, for a Deion Sanders to go from a historically black college and university setting to D1 Pac-12 Colorado? But for him,
most people that have trouble doing that are intimidated by the situation and by the job.
He's not.
He is not. So I don't think it's a big deal for him at all.
Did you have him at Dallas?
I did. I had him at Dallas, and I had the utmost respect for Deion at Dallas. I had a totally different view before I walked in there.
Yeah.
I had the view of Florida State, all of that. And and I got there, and he was the ultimate pro. He worked at his job. He studied film, team player. I was shocked, and he gained all of my respect.
I personally think he's going to do great things. I mean, he's pulling kids out there already. He already had a good slot to bring kids with him. But the one thing it always said, and if you ever watch video of him, he talks about, it says, it stuck out to me, and it stuck out to me over and over and over again. And I've heard other people comment about it. He said, my best plays were never in the game. My best plays were in practice. He said, that's where, and he talks about that all the time.
Yeah. I mean, and he was amazing now. And when I had him, I tell people he's one of the 2 greatest athletes I ever coached. And I had him when he had a bad big toe. He had torn the ligament under his big toe or ruptured it, and he was not 100%, and he was one of the 2 greatest athletes I ever coached.
Yeah. Well, and you're seeing that. So, I'm excited about that. Look, I like to get around the football season. We're in that sort of lull time now. We're not going to talk XFL and USFL. We'll deal with that another time.
We don't have to.
No, we don't have to. But, when you get a Colorado, when you get a coach like Dion out there, and you see what he's doing and instilling in those young men out there, you're going to respect people. You're going to do things. And we've seen some of the videos where he said, look, the ladies, the female, you're going to treat them with respect. You get in trouble off field, don't call me. If you're out, it's just a different character in him.
Oh, I loved when he walked in there, and one of the first things he said, if you don't want to be here, leave.
Leave. Exactly.
I'm not going to beg you to stay. And I love it. You got to. To me, that's a little old school, and I kind of like that. Could you close your eyes just a little bit and see Bobby Knight with a chair slinging it across the room? You just sort of got that feeling. Like, look, you want to be here? No, I don't care. Or Bear Bryant saying, we're going to run you till you puke. We don't care. Okay. Yeah.
That kind of. Looking ahead just real briefly, and I know you and I have just sort of scanned it a little bit. You got to look at Georgia. You got to look at. Here's a question for you. I've been meaning to ask you this because I know you know him well and you play golf. At the national championship game, David Pollock is there. He's talking. Saban's in the platform with him, and Pollock says basically something like Georgia has overtaken, or Georgia is now the team. And did you see? I don't know if you saw this, but Saban's looked like, he heard it. He thought he'd overtake. Is that the kind of stuff that motivates Nick Saban?
Yes. It always has. It always will. If you're a competitor, when somebody says somebody says you're not at the top anymore, somebody else is, yes, that motivates you. I don't care who you are. If you're a competitor, if you say you don't care, I don't want you on my team, because that means you don't want to compete. Yeah,
I agree. It's just there. And so it'll be interesting to see how they hit spring training in Alabama this year. It's gonna be.
Yeah. Well, they've had changes just like they have every year, but they'll hit it on all cylinders. Ken Whisenhunt's gone over there, and I have great respect for Ken. So it'll be exciting for them.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. One quick note on a coach on a college level. Do you think Jimbo Fisher's gonna make it at Texas A&M? This will be the year. If he don't this year,
they must have a lot of money, if they're going to pay him off, because they got a lot invested in that. And I think Jimbo's a competitor. Jimbo's coached good teams before. So can he? Yes. Will he? I don't know. If they can find a quarterback that can play for them, they got everything around it. But again, they may have paid everybody so much that everybody's playing for themselves and nobody's playing for Texas A&M.
Yeah, and they've lost a couple, didn't they? I think they actually lost a couple players too that went into the portal who didn't want to be in a losing situation.
Yeah, who knows? You just have to. they got a real uphill battle, and he's got an uphill battle, and it's been interesting to see. It will be interesting to see what happens out there.
I can see that. Looking ahead, let's switch to pros. We'll finish up on pros today. Two of your old teams, Dallas and Buffalo. What's it going to take to get them over the hump? They're right there. Everybody talks about it, except Stephen A., of course. But everybody talks about it. Buffalo is the enigma, and is it just because they just happen to be trapped behind a Bengals and a Chiefs team that they just have trouble with? I mean, where do you see those two teams?
I see it being Kansas City and Cincinnati and Buffalo for the near future. Those three are all going to battle it out. And why? Because they have the three top quarterbacks in the AFC. And how is Buffalo going to get up there? They're going to who knows? I mean, they're one play, two plays away from winning it, last year, getting there last year with that amazing comeback that not this past year, but the year before, that amazing comeback that Kansas City had. And it's crazy. So they're good enough to get there. Can they mentally get there? That's the question. It's a mental hump now. It's not a physical or talent hump. It's a mental hump. In the NFC, I tell you, Dallas has got a tough division with the Giants are playing good now. We know how good the Eagles are. I don't know if they can get there or not. I don't know if Dak can stay healthy long enough through the course of a season and playoffs to get them there or not. But and then San Francisco is going to be good.
Oh yeah,
they're going to be good. So the NFC's tough right now for anybody to break through that's not in that upper echelon.
Well, and it seems like Dak is one of those guys you root for. You like him. He's a good guy, but he just it's like I sort of say something like my golf game. It's just not consistent. It's just
right. And he hasn't stayed healthy. He's won. He's been hurt almost. It seems like almost every year, and then. They're right. They're hot and cold, and you can't be hot and cold. You got to play. You can be warm and hot, but you can't be hot and cold. Your offense can be okay one week, but your defense better play good, or you better get some plays on special teams. Right now, when they fail, they're failing in 2 out of 3, and failure in 2 out of 3 means losing.
Your last question here, posing this one. You're a coach back in the NFL, X team. We won't even put a team. We'll just say X team. But you're in need of a quarterback.
Yeah.
Do you draft one of the ones coming out of college, or do you go after a Derek Carr or an Aaron Rodgers?
Me, I go after Derek Carr or Aaron Rodgers. Because I don't see one like they got at Cincinnati coming out this year.
Right.
That was head and shoulders above everybody else. I don't see that guy in the draft that's an obvious choice to be a great player for a long time. So I try to get a quarterback that I think can help me win now, and then we'll work on that other part later.
From your connections, who would you think, maybe you may not have but just from outside looking in, the easier one to coach, Aaron Rodgers or Derek Carr?
I think Derek is a little easier to coach because he's had less success.
Yeah.
So he's willing to listen more, but Aaron's a great player and probably has a great idea about how to win, and is probably pretty eager to prove to people that he can win, still win.
Well, Aaron's got one Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen? I mean, and I don't mean this downplay or anything, but have you ever seen a player who is set apart from everybody else that much with one Super Bowl win?
Well, I can't think of any right offhand, but how many times have they won 12 and 13 games in the season? A bunch. So,
Well, no offense to my producer, they are playing in. Minnesota finally started playing ball this year, so
yeah,
the league in Detroit, Minnesota, and Chicago has not exactly been a whirlwind of competition.
that is a true statement. I would agree with that. And but I still think that, I mean, statistics do lie sometimes, but when you have consistent statistics over the course of many years, you're doing something right, and you're being pretty good.
Oh yeah,
So,
I did think of, but I did think. Speaking of quarterbacks, I did think of one funny. I'm doing my Baptist invitation here. That's not the final point. We got one more before the invitation. The coaching change at Denver and Russell Wilson with Sean Payton coming in. Can you see a train wreck already happening with that one?
Well, the train wreck happened when they gave up everything they gave up to get Russell Wilson. And then he ended up not being a good situation. But to be honest with you, if Peyton is smart, which I think he is very, very smart, he'll figure out a way to get the most out of this guy, and they'll get back sooner than later.
I love the quote. He was like, the first day he was there, they asked him about, Russell Wilson having his own part of the locker room and his own trainers and his own this. And Peyton looked at him like, man, we're going to look at that. That ain't going to happen.
Yeah. I think Peyton's pretty good. I think he knows what he's doing.
I can do that. It's always fun to sit with you, Coach. We got some springtime in now. We'll check back later after the draft. And, of course, we'll be getting ready for the year as it goes along. But we'll be out on the golf. Hopefully you and I'll get on the golf course again soon. We'll have some good times. But, folks, Chan Gailey, coach extraordinaire, glad to have him with us to talk end of the year and also what's going ahead in this time of year. Coach, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Doug.
Hey folks, MyPillow is excited to bring to you their biggest bedding sale ever. For a limited time, you're going to get the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, a set of pillowcases for only $9.98, and rejuvenate your bed with a MyPillow mattress topper for as low as $99.99. $99.99, get a mattress pillow topper. Look, they come in all sizes. They got all kinds of stuff, blankets. They've got duvets. They've got quilts. They got comforters. They got body pillows. They got bolster pillows. They got all that big discounts. And also, they're extending their money-back guarantee for Christmas until March 1, 2023, making them the perfect gift for your friends, your family, and for everyone you know. Folks, and just from a personal note here, I have the Giza Dream Sheets. They're on my bed right now. I slept on them last night. Some of the best sheets that we and Lisa and I have ever owned. They are worth, at this price, they're a steal. My wife and I have bought bed sheets, linens at much higher cost. It's supposedly much higher quality. These from MyPillow are at the highest of quality, and at a price like this, you can't beat it. So go now to MyPillow.com, use promo code Collins, COLLINS, or call 1-800-986-3994, and you'll get huge discounts on all the MyPillow bedding products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98, and get all your shopping done while qualities last. And remember, put in that promo code Collins for these discounts.